Hi guys, Harold here again for another weekly vlog. Recently I was asked a question about what my experience in Korea has been like. I've been here for over 2 years now. I'm in my third year living and working in Korea. So I thought I'd just share my experiences with you guys as we're just walking along the river here. So a lot of questions that I get asked is regarding like how much Korean I know. Being half Korean and half American, you would assume that I am fluent in Korean, but partially due to laziness, partially due to being too busy with teaching and other aspects of living in Korea, my level of Korean is not where I want it to be. Now, even if you have zero experience knowing Korean, you can still function fairly well while being here, whether you're a student or working for a job. But I do recommend learning Korean because if you want to make Korean friends or just interact with the people around you, it's a lot easier if you're able to at least communicate somewhat in Korean. So while Korean students start learning English at an early age, you typically at grade 3 of elementary school, they start taking formal English classes in the public schools. Some even earlier if they attend hagwons. Their level of fluency isn't going to be on the same par as a native speaker, of course, but even just a regular everyday conversation, most of the people that you interact with aren't going to be comfortable speaking in English. Because you have to think about it this way: to fully learn a language, you have to be immersed in the language. A lot of these students, the only time that they're practicing English is in the classroom. When they're at home, when they're with their friends, they are speaking in Korean, and once they get to high school, they're focused more on preparing for university, getting ready for those tests. And so just practicing regular conversational English on a regular basis isn't something really at the forefront. And another thing that you have to understand about Korean culture is that if they think they're going to mess up, like if they feel like they're not fully fluent, even if they have a pretty good understanding of English, they're not going to be comfortable speaking with you in English until they get to know you better. And kind of an icebreaker to kind of start that conversation is to speak Korean with them. That way you're getting them into the comfort zone that they are more comfortable. You're getting them into the area where they're more comfortable with talking to you, and they can also help you along the way. So for a lot of people in Korea, if they're not fluent in English, even if they have a really good understanding and you can understand them, have a regular conversation with them, if they think that they're not going to speak perfectly with you, a lot of them are going to be too shy to speak in English to you unless they really have to, like in some situations at a store. So if you're planning on living in Korea, I do recommend taking the time to learning Korean, even just if it's just a little bit, so that you can live more comfortably here and you can interact with other people. Because what's the point of living in another country if you're not going to speak with the people? Another part of my experience in Korea has been the weather. I grew up in the US in the central part in the state called Illinois. It's kind of the area that I grew up in was a farming area, pretty moderate temperatures. But once I got to Korea, this weather is something else. Like during the summertime, the weather, just even a few weeks ago, was extremely humid, and I spent no time outside. Now the weather's actually hotter, but it's less humid. Like right now, I believe it's like 95 degrees, 34 Celsius, I believe. We don't get that kind of weather where I grew up. And the springs here tend to be shorter, summers tend to be really long, and then you have that monsoon season where it just rains all the time. We're past the monsoon season now, so hopefully the weather starts clearing up and this heat goes away. Fall is actually one of my favorite times of year here in Korea because the leaves change colors, and there are some of those really red maple leaves that you can see in the mountains, and it's just really cool to go to places like Namisam or one of the mountains like Soraksan and just see those leaves change color. And then some of the mountains have some Buddhist temples in the mix as well, so getting all of that together is really cool to experience in the fall. So hopefully once fall gets here I can go ahead and explore a little bit more. So in terms of food, it wasn't really much of a shock to me when I moved to Korea. Growing up in a Korean American household, my mom was cooking Korean food all the time, and even if you are vegetarian or you need certain dietary requirements, like you need halal food due to religious reasons, you can find those in a lot of the bigger cities, and even in smaller cities like mine, because of the large number of migrant communities here, they do have those offerings as well if you're wanting to cook at home. Even when I am craving food from back home in the US, just like some stuff like McDonald's or Burger King or anything like that, they have a lot of those same types of restaurants here in Korea. They do have their own twist to the menu, like McDonald's, they'll have what's called a bulgogi burger that is like a marinated beef patty, or like recently they had the BTS meal which had special sauce for the nuggets. So it's just really cool to kind of see what options they have in other countries for some of the foods that you're more familiar with back home. So if you're worried about finding something to eat while you're living or visiting Korea, it's not gonna be that hard if you take the time to cook or find the different restaurants and stuff that fit your needs. One thing to note is that if you're vegetarian or vegan, there is a lot of seafood in different items like kimchi and some of the other foods, so you kind of have to be careful of that. You kind of have to learn the different food that's available, and a lot of times for a lot of the restaurants, it's usually the menus as is, but if you're able to speak some Korean with them, you may be able to get them to change out some of the items. Another part of my experience in Korea has been how close to nature that you can get. I'm not even talking about like the smaller cities like the city that I live in, but even in Seoul you can be in the middle of the city and find hiking. You'll see all sorts of different kinds of animals. In places like Olympic Park, they've got the different types of squirrels there that are really cool to see, wild rabbits and other animals. Just the whole outdoor aspect, it's really easy to leave your apartment, go for a walk along the river. One of the biggest changes for me was moving to a city that is right next to the ocean, so when weather allows and this whole situation's not going on, it's really nice to be able to take the bus out to the beach, be there in less than 15 minutes and just walk, listen to the waves, and just kind of take all of that in. It's really relaxing for me, and it was really something that I didn't have growing up in the US, so being able to experience nature that way has been really cool. So that just really scratches the surface of what my experience here in Korea has been. Overall, it's been a really positive experience. I know that not every day is going to be just sunny and everything, and there are hardships and difficulties navigating life here in Korea, but overall it's been a very wonderful experience for me. And for those of you that have been to Korea, what has your experience been? Or for those that haven't been to Korea yet, what do you want to experience when you visit here? So let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys on the next adventure.